You want this to be the year where you accomplish your goals and you strive personally and professionally. If so, my friend Meredith Atwood recently wrote a new book, The Year of No Nonsense: How to Get Over Yourself and On with Your Life. It is a book that goes deep into detail on how you can go on to achieve all the goals that you were after. With any new year, we all get super excited about all the possibilities, but we need the right approach so we truly can have a year of no nonsense. If you want to go grab your copy of The Year of No Nonsense, it will be in the show notes. It's also available on places like Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and a few others. But anyways, The Year of No Nonsense, that will be in the show notes. Let's get right into the episode. What's up, Breakthrough Success listeners? Mark Bird, the podcasting coach here, helping people launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts. And if you are someone who's ever wondered how to get a branded talk, think TEDx, Goldcast, all these big name talks, if you've been wanting to get one of those, if you're also someone who wants to speak with purpose so that people in the stands listen to you and they are transformed by your message, this is going to be a really awesome episode for you. The guest who joins us today, he's a multiple-time TEDx, MoMondays and PMx speaker. He's also the host of the top-rated Conversations with Passion radio show, founder of the speaking program, and he's been featured on multiple television specials. Our guest who joins us today, I believe this is, second time on Breakthrough Success. He's been on Profitable Public Speaking as well, but here he is. He's none other than Corey Poirier. Corey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. It's an absolute pleasure. I'm super stoked to be here with you. So thanks for bringing me on today.
Corey, it is such a pleasure to have you again on Breakthrough Success. And we've definitely interviewed each other back and forth, but I feel like there's a lot of interesting angles we could take this, because I feel like there are so many people who want to get that branded talk. I mean, I've been trying to get a TEDx for years, and I finally got it. I'm stoked about it. But I'm wondering if you could share with us, what is your approach for getting that branded talk? Like, is it relationship building? I've heard some people do that. Some people pay to get on the stage. Like, what's your approach for branded talks?
So I love that question, Mark. And first of all, congrats, because I know you're going to crush it, and it can be a game changer, the idea of being on that branded stage for a lot of people. And I'll add in this, and then I'll jump right into your question. But one of the big things too is a lot of people miss these days with branded talks is not every single one goes viral. Even back in the day, everyone didn't go viral either, but certainly there were less. Let's say we use TEDx, there were less TEDx talks, so your chances of going viral were a bit higher. But what a lot of people miss the boat on is it's what you do after it airs. So, this will be front of mind for you really soon. But once it airs, then there's the idea of how are you leveraging it. So one idea is if somebody's considering you for a project, or if you're trying to pitch something to somebody, that you can actually say, here's the link to my whatever it is, in your case, TEDx talk. Here's the link, check out my TEDx talk. All of a sudden, even just saying you have a TEDx talk, some people may not even go watch the video, but they automatically go, dude, they curated. He got curated to get on a TEDx stage. This guy's got something, type of thing. And the other side is being able to say, as seen on TEDx. So what I'm getting at is a lot of people lose the idea that it's how you also leverage it. So that's, I just want to add that because I may forget to mention that later. In terms of the approach that I take, it's kind of a twofold approach to follow what you just said. You asked, is it relationship building? Is it, what's the actual approach? So with a TEDx, in terms of, you asked about paying, you can't actually pay to get on a TEDx stage, which is, so it's important people know that. So if a TEDx organizer ever says, here's our fee, then you probably want to check with TED.com to make sure this is on the level. Because, and it could change, by the way. I can't say that it hasn't changed already, but up until this point, I've never heard of such a circumstance. So just so people know, typically TEDx, they don't pay you to be on a TEDx stage, and you don't pay to get on a TEDx stage. That's typically the norm, let's say. Now, I say they don't pay you. Sometimes certain ones, I think, have the ability to pay for your travel. But again, I don't know if that's still the case or not. But having said that, so that in terms of the relationship building, that part, yes, still the relationship building. And then when I said it's twofold, the second part is it's also a lot to do with how you submit your application if you're going that route. And most people still are going to be probably going that road unless you have a really big story and they reach out to you, or you know the organizer and they reach out to you. So let's take those off the table, because if you know the organizer, then you already have the relationship. So let's pretend that's not the case. And if they reach out to you, well, you don't have to worry about anything we're about to tell you. So those things let's take off the table, but I still think it's a twofold approach where that's what I would take and help people with, is how do you build that relationship with the organizer so that you're on their radar and you exist in their world rather than just being another application. And then the second part is what's on that application. And that ties into how well did you customize it to the event they're running? Like, they usually have a theme. It ties into how well do you pitch yourself as the person that can bring something fresh that hasn't been heard before in a way that it hasn't been heard, probably about an idea that is maybe a new twist on an old idea, or present it in a way that they haven't considered it before. So it is really a twofold thing, Mark. And obviously, for whatever branded event or talk you're looking at, the answer to this is going to be different, because there's a thing in Canada called MoMondays, and they have events across the country. Well, that approach is going to be dramatically different than TEDx, because they don't necessarily do a traditional application process. You would normally reach out to the local event, and I think what they would typically like to see is you attend a local event every now and then, and they start seeing your face and they get to know you. So their events, typically, whatever spot you're in, they run once a month. I think it might be wrong this, but I think it's the first Monday of the month. And what Mo Monday stands for is Motivational Mondays. So it's, obviously it makes sense that it's on a Monday. And then, and as we talked about recently, I just launched a branded talk series called Blu Talks. And I mean, that's a whole conversation we can have or don't have to have. But for us right now, we're in a situation where I have quite a few people in my network, because of running a speaking program for so long, that I'm in a situation where I'm not even able to accept applications yet, because we have I have a full network of people who we really curated it early on, and now we have a waiting list for the upcoming ones. So to answer the question, that hopefully answered it, but it depends on which one, but that just gives you a range. And then if you look at Goalcast, they don't run live events. So typically with a Goalcast, if you already have a video that's amazing, now I'll have to add in, it probably can't be a branded video, like you can't have a video that has a logo of another brand in it. But if you send it to Goalcast, then what happens is you have this video, they love it. In a perfect world, you send it along to them. They'll look at it, take it to their team, see if it's a good fit. And then if they decide to run it, they'll brand it with Goalcast, and they'll do all the work of pushing it out. So there, in about, Mark, 5 minutes or less, that's hopefully a longer answer to the question that you asked, covering more branded talks than just TEDx.
Yeah, and I know TEDx, like you can't pay your way to get on that stage, but there are certain stages that they will let you pay to get on the stage. I know Corey and I were both at New Media Summit, and you can pay to get time on that stage. And there are a lot of events where they charge you $10,000 to get in front of a highly targeted group of potential clients that you're able to sell. So there are certainly different styles of speaking. And it's interesting that, I know you've done all these different, you've spoken at all these different big name style branded events. What made you do Blu Talks? What made you start that?
Well, and Mark, you mentioned something really important there, so I'll make sure I cover that, and then I'll dive right in if that's okay. But you asked about the paid stages, and so when we're talking branded talks, of course, I wanted to make sure that people do that on TEDx, because people ask me that all the time. How much does it cost to get on a TEDx stage? So I wanted to clarify that, but at the same time, you're 100% correct. A lot of paid stages that exist, and so interestingly enough, I'm going to give I'm a full disclosure guy. I've softened on this a lot. So when I say that, what I mean is I used to be in the camp that you don't pay to get on a stage, you get paid to be on a stage. And so I've had this unique situation where I've been fortunate that for a lot of years, and still if I wanted to, I've been a weekly paid speaker, getting paid to be on stages. I took that model and ran with it a lot of years ago. I'm 17 years now as a paid speaker. And I was like, no, you don't pay to be on stages. And I was really in that camp of the other side. But I also didn't do the sell from the room a lot either. And I've totally changed my feeling on this in the last year. And I did it early on, and then I moved away from it completely, and then I've sort of moved back again. So, now I'm doing more selling in the room. In fact, I signed up for Lisa Sasovich's program when we were at the summit that you just talked about. And because I really see the value of this now. And the reasoning is because I realized that if I have a program or something, this gives the people in the room more access to me. And, they can now dive deeper with me rather than just that one-off talk. And so I started realizing, for me at least, it's almost like, I understand now that it's almost like a disservice if I don't give that opportunity. But to finish this whole thing, a lot of times to get on those stages, if it's not your own stage, which we can talk about in a second, Blu Talks, about the benefit of having my own stage. But if it's not your own stage, then it's hard to sell on that stage because, most of these people that bring you in, if they're not paying you, but they bring you in, or if they're paying you, they don't want you usually selling on the stage. So then you might have to buy your own time. But here's to your key thing you said, and that's why I want to address this, is you're actually paying to be in front of a targeted audience. And so then you have to look at it, and this is how I look at it, different than speaking to get paid. It's now almost like you're running a separate business from your speaking to get paid, because you're investing a certain amount of money to have the opportunity to be in front of an audience that could potentially buy and spend more than you spent initially. And you're taking a chance. So it is still like it's like running any other business, right? You're buying a product to resell at a higher price, essentially. And so I just think that if you're willing to do it and you can pay to do it, and it's the right audience, and you make sure all those things are in place, then now I understand the value of that in a big way. And what I would say, though, is if you're early on, my personal opinion still is, don't jump in if you don't have a safety net financially. Don't jump in and start toying with spending $10,000 to get on a stage if you're remortgaging your house to do it. Like, you need to know that you have a product that's already selling. You need to test it. I mean, so I just want to clarify that, because I do see a lot of people I know people that have taken their retirement income to invest to get on paid stages going, well, I'll sell a bunch of stuff. And even outside of that, I'll just get a whole bunch of marketing. And sometimes, as you know, Mark, best intentions, sometimes people run an event where they say they're going to have 500 people and they get 50 or they get 20. So I just wanted to clarify that part, because I think it's important as well. Blu Talks, here's the interesting part. We have, it's similar to other branded talks where we don't have the opportunity or option to sell on that stage because it's a different style of event. It's an event where people come to see back-to-back speakers, get empowered, walk away, being able to hopefully transform their life, or at least see their life in a different way. And because of that, because people are only on the stage a short amount of time and it's multiple speakers, if it was selling from the stage, it probably wouldn't flow right, if you know what I mean, because there's too many speakers and everyone would have to have the opportunity to sell. And so you'd be getting pitched 8 different products in front of the exact same audience. So it's a different style than that. But the reason, which is what you asked, of why I created Blu Talks, is I wanted people within a branded talk format to have something that I felt wasn't necessarily being served yet, which was being able to get on that stage and talk about various different topics. So what Blu stands for is business, life, universe. And so on that stage, I want people to be able to talk about the woo-woo, if we call it that. I love that name, and I don't say it in a derogatory way. I mean it in a positive way, like people that are healers, holistic health, that type of thing. I wanted them to feel free to come on that stage and be able to say what they've learned and discovered, while also being on the stage with maybe a CEO who's sharing business tips for how to crush it in your business, and at the very same time having somebody coming up and sharing their life story about a tragedy that happened, or something that was just magical in their life. And so why I created it was essentially, the easiest way to say that is to give people another platform that I didn't feel was being served. And then the secondary reason is because I'm a speaker first. So we're talking about having a speaking program and me teaching people the branded talk world. Well, for me, I wanted to have a really speaker-friendly branded talk event where people as speakers would have footage. They would have stuff they walk away with. They would have a Q&A with the audience where the audience gets more time with them. So it's the idea that the speaker now, just as much as the audience, is kind of both equally are front and center. So that's the why.
And it is interesting to hear how Blu Talks has that angle. And I mean, it is interesting. You're just starting this. I have a few that you've already done, a few that you have in the queue. So I mean, we'll link to that in the show notes for anyone who's interested. Also link to my TEDx talk, because we were recording this pre-TEDx. I'm thinking of prep, but I know this will come out at the time my TEDx talk is already done. So we'll link to that as well. I'm wondering if you could share with us one of the biggest questions people have when it comes to creating their own stage, which is how do you get attendees into those seats?
Okay, so I just had this conversation with somebody 2 days ago, maybe three, who I believe, and I'm going by memory now, and I should remember this, but you and I were chatting that I'm having one of these times in my life where I'm like, I just got hit with flu, which I never get hit with, so I'm operating at about 82%, I figure, of my 110. So I'm thinking this is who she used to work for, because I say this because I never like to say it wrong, and then somebody say that's not what I told you, but I think she worked for Grant Cardone for a little bit. And then she also has had a friend that worked with Tony Robbins, and then both of them in the ticket department selling tickets. So this is going to answer your question: is getting people in events. There's lots of ways, obviously, to do it. So I mean, there's the traditional ways like you can target in a very big way on social media the people that live in that area. So that's one option. You can also dial in, if you want it very specific, the people that live in that area that are into business, if it's a business conference. So one way you can do it is, of course, ads, so advertising. You can do all the traditional stuff, like you can get on the local station with advertising and in publications and stuff like that. You can go one step further with media. You can do podcasting, which is a great idea, and target very specific. The only catch with that, as you know, Mark, is a podcast is an evergreen thing. It's there for life. And if you're doing it for one event and you do all these interviews for one event, you got to remember that if you never run the event again, or if you run a different event every year, then people are going to hear this old event part like 5 years later. It's not, the only downside is that interview is not going to keep serving you. It's only going to serve you the one time. But what you could do is you could get on drive time radio, regular radio, and things that are more topical that even after your interview's gone, it might disappear forever anyway, and promote your event. So there's all those kind of things. There's word of mouth, there's ticket giveaways, there's all that kind of stuff. But I'll tell you what this lady told me that worked with Grant Cardone and then worked with somebody who worked with Tony Robbins. She went in and said, what's the magic formula? That's what she wanted to know. How do you guys move the tickets that people aren't moving? And they said, okay, here's the magic formula. You pick up the phone and call companies and invite them to the event. So what I mean by that, because I don't want to misconstrue that, is I'm not saying what they typically do will pick up the company and call a one-person company like a solopreneur, but what they're doing is, let's say Tony Robbins coming to town, and I can validate this because whenever I used to have my 1-800 number for my business when I was a little more fixed and not so mobile, I used to get the voicemails when I was traveling. Hey, it's so-and-so from Robbins International, and Tony's coming to town, and we wanted to see if your company might want to buy tickets for your staff, your sales team. Stuff like that. So what they did was they did bulk sales, but they did it via phone. So what I'm getting at is, it'd be great, Mark, if there was a sexy secret formula, but it still seems the big ones who know what they're doing and probably have an easier time selling tickets than the smaller people that are just new. And I say smaller, I just mean like somebody who's brand new, green, if you will, versus somebody like Tony Robbins who's been doing this 30 years. If you look at those companies that are doing this all this time and have a big brand name behind it, they're still picking up the phone and calling. So, and so what's the takeaway there? You don't have to use the phone if you want, but I think the takeaway is bulk sales. If you want to do bulk sales for an event, you reach out to people that have, and by the way, this doesn't just mean companies. It could be associations, associations that are in the same industry as your event. Send emails to them, pick up the phone. The reason I think the phone still works is because, as you know, you build a stronger relationship with a voice. Maybe you jump on Zoom, but sometimes if you're going to, say, a traditional corporation, but Zoom might not be a thing to them yet, right? They might not be jumped on Zoom yet, or even Skype. So what I'm getting at is that picking up the phone might be the option. And then the last part I'll say to that is, you might decide with your event, I'm going to run this event, I got a good investment in it. You might not pick up the phone. I'm not saying that the CEO of the new event company is picking up the phone and calling everybody, but you may hire somebody who literally just, for a day a week, picks up the phone and reaches out and says, hey, we got tickets. And I think this is whether it's free tickets or paid tickets. It's still, this day and age, people have choice. So even a free event you're not guaranteed with a free event you're going to fill up. So I guess that's my answer on that.
And I mean, I've heard a lot of ways to get attendees, but I haven't heard yet just like phone calling and like being able to bulk sale to companies, to associations. And it definitely sounds brilliant because these are companies where they've got a ton of money, if you call the right ones, and they've got a ton of people on their staff who would benefit from your event. So for people organizing your own event and trying to get a ton of people, that is a great way to get bulk sales. And like Grant Cardone, Tony Robbins, those guys are literally filling up entire stadiums. And it's probably through this method, like a big part of it, like these bulk sales that they generate to be able to get that many people. So we've talked about getting on big stages. We've talked about organizing your own stage, but when you are up there and you are speaking, I mean, it's either going to be like you provide value to the attendees, you have that transformation, or you feel like a disconnect. And I know the more you speak, the more you get to feel that connection transformation. So I'm wondering if you could share some advice on how we can speak with purpose so the people in the seats, the attendees, really get transformed by our talk.
Yeah, so this is one of those areas, Mark, that we could probably do a full interview, longer than even the amount of time of this interview, simply on this one area. But I'm going to give you the best answer I can in a short amount of time. So for me, I would say there's a few different areas I focus on. First of all, you mentioned the word purpose. And so I'll say that's where it all starts. So even beyond, I'm going to give you a few techniques, but even beyond that, it all starts with purpose. Are you actually speaking about something you're passionate about? And so I think, and I believe, an audience, and I don't think they believe this just from a guest, from watching. I mean, I've asked audiences, I've surveyed, and I've also helped enough speakers to know this. But a speaker that speaks with passion every day of the week will resonate more with an audience, even than a speaker that speaks with great content but doesn't care about the topic. So if I had to choose, I'd rather listen to a passionate speaker who has decent content than, let's say, a speaker that's bored that has brilliant content. So obviously you want to have both of those. So what I'm getting at is that if you want to really connect with people and they are there and with you on purpose, then speak passionately about what you're talking about. Actually love and be enthusiastic about what you're talking about. I was just reading a book right now, an old book actually, by Michael Hyatt, called Platform. And he's talking about Steve Jobs, which you see in so many books about Steve Jobs, about how when he launched the iPhone, how he, his words that he talked about, this magical device, this awesome device, you're going to love this. This is fantastic. You got the vibe that this dude loved this product, that he used it and had it in his pocket. Where sometimes you see people release products and then you wonder, do they even own this? Whereas Steve Jobs, he felt like this guy is dialed into this phone. He loves this. And it was just being launched and he was that passionate. So I think even though he was a speaker that was monotone to some degree and he wasn't walking around full of energy, you felt that vibe that this guy loves this product. So first of all, I would say be passionate about what you're talking about and you're going to connect with your audience anyway. But then obviously you want to have great content. I mean, I think a speaker should aim to have both. Second part is, I would say great content is king, but I'll add in emotional connection is queen. And the queen rules the castle. So emotional connection is just as important as well. And so what do I mean by that? Find a way to connect with your audience. A great way to do that right from the start, and people always wonder, how do I start my talk? If you don't have a solid, this is going to shock your world opener, a great way to start, always easy to do, is ask a question. How many people can relate to this? How many people have had this happen in your life? And automatically they're now thinking and you're connecting. So when I do my talk I use this opening different times about stand-up comedy and how I bombed horribly on the stand-up stage and that whole story, which I'm sure you heard, Mark. But I'll ask the question, how many people here would jump on a stand-up stage if I can get you a gig tonight? And what I do is, if I'm in a certain town, I'll pick the town, the local comedy club that's most well known. And so, say in Canada, Yuck Yucks is a national chain. So I'll say, how many people, if I can get you a gig at the Yuck Yucks Club tonight, would jump on the stage? If I was in a place where the Laugh Factory or the Improv is, I'd ask that. And then, of course, what you're doing is you're customizing it to them. But at the same time, by asking that question, you're connecting them. Because now they start thinking, oh, I could never jump on a comedy stage. Or, I'd love to do that. Or, oh my God, I can't believe this guy did comedy and he bombed horribly the first time. But you're connecting now with the audience on something that they can at least imagine. But you're pulling them in by asking that question. So first of all, I would say be passionate about what you're talking about. Secondly, I mentioned content is king and still super important. So great content. The third thing I would say is that you need to find a way to emotionally connect with the audience, and getting them engaged so that you start connecting emotionally is getting their hand raised, ask them questions, getting them involved that way. And then the second part to emotional connection is then start revealing stuff about yourself. Be open and vulnerable. And if they hear stuff that's, that they hear and they go, wow, I can't believe he went through that. I'm going through that right now. well, obviously you can imagine you start emotionally connecting with that audience pretty quickly. Last thing I'll say is storytelling. If you can be a masterful storyteller, the audience will be along with you for that ride.
And those are a lot of really good points. Asking questions kind of makes a conversation happen, because it's either like an open conversation or it's one of those like in your mind conversations. But either way, that it definitely brings out more of a conversation and gets the attendees engaged and involved in what you're actually saying. So for everyone listening, I do recommend you think about those 3 pillars when you are creating your next talk, because if you prepare and you keep those in mind, it's just going to be more engaging overall. You're going to have the impact you want to have. And I know our good friend Corey here, he is coming out with a new book. I'm going to give you some time to talk about that and just some other good places we can find you as well.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Mark. The book itself is called The Book of Why and How. And it's, I'm really excited that I finally decided, again, you can probably hear, I mentioned earlier about my switch from now doing quite a few more paid gigs and paid talks and selling in the room and all that kind of stuff, that terminology we talked about. So I've softened on that. I've also changed my approach and thought on self-publishing versus publishing. Now, when I say this, you probably hear as well, I haven't changed it fully that I've moved away from the other. Like, I'm still doing paid talks. That's never going anywhere. Like when I say paid talks, I mean me being paid. That model's not going anywhere. I love that model. I've always lived within that. Same thing with the book thing. You'll never see me leave self-publishing, but I've softened on the idea of going with a publisher. Whereas traditionally, I've kind of purposely went the other route. I mean, I think book number 10 now, and I worked with publishers twice, and the rest are all self-published. But this one here, I'm going all in. I put all my cards on the table. I'm going all in with a publisher. This is the most I've ever went all in. And so the reasoning, super quickly for people that might go, why publishing versus self-publishing? And both are awesome models, as you know, Mark. The reason this time around for me is I've made the decision that for me to move that up that next tier, I need to get the book into as many hands as possible. And the best way to do that for me is to have distribution that I wouldn't be able to do on my own. And then also it opens up some doors. Like there's media, large media that you can get into with a publisher a little easier than being self-published. So there's some reasons I did that, but the takeaway from this is that I'm going with a publisher. So what this means is that this book is going to be in bookstores nationwide, which I'm super excited about. Just to talk about what a publisher can do quickly, within less than a month, my book was available at Target. I wouldn't have been able to do that in 10 years as a self-publisher. So having said that, the book itself is essentially, the idea behind it is I've done so many talks in my life about finding your purpose, living on purpose, finding your why. And the more I did them, the more people kept coming to me saying, how did you find yours? And I started realizing that I happy accidented my way into my passion. I discovered it by accident. It was on a stand-up comedy stage. And I discovered my passion for speaking. But I didn't uncover it easily. It didn't come to me when I was a kid. So the good part is I had to discover it by accident. And then I could basically reverse engineer and figure out what I could have done differently to find it earlier. And then I started interviewing conversations with passion. I mean, I interviewed thousands of people and asked them the question, how they found their passion. So essentially, you could call your passion your why or your purpose or your what, or not your what, sorry, your why, your purpose, or your how you actually do it in terms of what you love about it. So there's so many ways that you can call it your calling, if you will. I mean, we hear so many terms on what you were put here to do. But to me, your why, the big thing with your why is it's the mixture between your purpose and your life calling. And so finding your why, I think, is everything. Finding your passion I feel important, but there's a lot of people that would argue with me on that. But your passion, a lot of times, is what you're doing, right? Like my passion is doing a podcast, but that's probably not why you're doing it. And so I think when you find your why, that's the thing that doesn't change very much. So if you can find that changes everything. And so this book, essentially in a nutshell, helps you find your why. And then once you find it, it also helps you with the how. Because a lot of things stop there. Well, now you know why you're doing this, but what do you do now? What do you do about it? How do you actually act that out? How do you run a business behind that? How do you actually become successful at it? So the book is kind of the mixture between why you want to do it and then how you would do it. So that's the book. Like I said, I can answer any additional questions on that, but that's the book in a nutshell. And I believe, without looking, I believe you have a quote in the book as well, Mark. I believe we have your quote in it. So I will add too, in the back of the book, there's a bonus section with 400 roughly quotes by thought leaders I've interviewed. So the book is 3 sections. It's basically finding your why, that section. Then there's a section on how to thrive when you have. The third section on is how to be enlightened while doing it. So almost like a conscious thought leader. And then the bonus section is the 400 quotes by other thought leaders. So that's the book in a nutshell. And then, Mark, I can let you jump in, but you mentioned about how to reach me and how to find more about me. So maybe I'll add that in. 2 things. I'll give away, this is a way to connect with me, and also I'll give it away as a freebie, which means people are getting value beyond just, how to find me online. So what I'll say is that if people want a free copy of my other book called The Book of Public Speaking, which will give people more insight to what we talked about today. And that book is unique as well. It's not just a traditional book. It's basically my thoughts on speaking and some insight for me, then interviews with some of the top leaders I've interviewed around speaking, like Tom Ziglar, the son of Zig Ziglar, and also Trudy Carter, who wrote the Comedy Bible about how to insert humor into your comedy, or into your speaking, rather. And then the third section is, again, more quotes by other thought leaders. That's a common theme with me. So that's the bookofpublicspeaking.com. People can grab that free book. And then I'll add one more sort of, I'm going to say, value add for people. If you'd like to learn more about getting a branded talk, getting on stage of speaking and getting actually paid to do it, or if you want to get on those paid stages, as we talked about earlier, or if you just want to speak to share your message and you want to learn more about that and whether or not I might be a fit down the road for you, one of the things I finally started adding in is a free strategy call. And so I'm offering up 15-minute free strategy calls. When you consider that I normally charge for coaching and what I charge, this is a nice value add because there's actually no cost, and you can jump on with me. We can talk a little bit of strategy, and we can see if I'm a good fit for you and if my program might be a good fit. Best way to do that is reach out to me at thatspeakerguy.com. Sorry, I'll correct that again. The best way to do that is to reach out to me at thatspeakerguy@gmail.com. So that's my email, thatspeakerguy@gmail.com. And then if you want to do the online Connect with Corey thing that I mentioned earlier, that's at thatspeakerguy.com. And so on that page, thatspeakerguy.com, you'll find my YouTube videos. You'll find my TEDx talks on there. You'll find my social media and all that other kind of jazz. So that's me in a nutshell, Mark.
Wow, well, we'll definitely include all those in the show notes. There's a lot of different ways to reach out to Corey, learn more from him, get all this awesome content in addition to this episode. So all those will be the show notes. We'll also include YouTube Decoded in the show notes for anyone who wants to grab a copy of my latest book at the time of recording, but there's probably a new book out at this time for me. But once again, Corey, thank you so much for coming on Breakthrough Success. It was such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks, Mark. It's an absolute pleasure. And as I always say, but I'll say it again, I think we've done combined maybe 5 or 6 interviews, but just keep doing what you're doing, Mark, because you're somebody who way earlier than most people jumped into this world. And I think you're going to impact more people in your life than you realize. So thank you for being you.